You just received an evacuation notice or some other triggering event has taken place where you are now convinced you've done your threat assessment, and based upon your threat assessment you have come to the conclusion you have to move. So you've got to get out of town, you've got to leave this area because it's too dangerous to stay. So what kind of food are you going to want to take on that journey with you? Well, there's quite a few variables. So Ben, one of the subscribers, has asked a question about what is a good 2 week food supply. So I have a video where I responded with 2 weeks food, emergency food that you would have if you're staying at home. Which check out that video to get some information on that. In this video, we're going to talk about 2 weeks worth of food that you're going to need to move. Now, here's the thing: is it's different food. It's different kind of food when you're moving, when you're evacuating, than it would be if you're just at home. We have access to water and your fridge and all your cooking, your stove and your pots and pans and everything else. It's just really like being at home. You're just kind of cooking almost like normal and eating the same kind of foods that you normally eat. When you're moving, it's going to be a wee bit different. Now, here's something that I have to give advice right up front. You have to be very careful about eating foods in your emergency food kit, having foods in your emergency food kits that when you eat them, they're going to have an adverse effect on your body. You need to know this. Like, this is something you have to practice. It's the same as if you decide you're going to be a concealed carry person. I believe if you're going to be a concealed carry person, you need to have training. So this is no different. This is something that will absolutely affect you if you're not used to eating the types of food that you're packing. So if you decide, hey, it's going to be a 5 day trip, we'll just buy, 15 MREs per person. So we'll have one MRE per meal when we're moving. Let me tell you, MREs. When I had MREs, which didn't have to eat that often, but a couple times in basic training, I had MREs. They give me constipation, and there's this long-held belief that there's something in MREs that will actually give you constipation. Like, some people believe it's some kind of a chemical that they add, or some kind of powder that they add, or whatever the case is. So I've done some research on it, and I can't really seem to find that there's anything that anyone has actually added to it. It just simply seems to be two things that I can find. One, it's really high sodium content, right? Will literally just thicken up your blood and thicken up the all the juices in your digestive tract, and makes it a little bit harder to process. The other things about MREs is they're very low in fiber. So these are meals that have been sitting in the bags for a period of time, and there's not a lot of fiber in it. And what it does is they believe it disrupts your gut bacteria. So your gut bacteria gets thrown off because you're eating more processed foods than you normally eat. So just that can affect you. So that's why what I would recommend is whatever your emergency food is, it's foods that your body is used to eating. And that means that crack out an MRE every once in a while and eat one for your dinner. If you're going on a hike, whatever your emergency food that you decide on, and we're going to give you some tips here or some suggestions here of what I would recommend you do. But whatever it is you do finally decide to do for yourself, make sure you're eating it before you go on a trip. Make sure you're eating it before you ever need it in an emergency. This is really, really important. You need to know how your body, and for instance, if you're traveling with children, you need to know how their bodies are going to react. The last thing you want is that you're constipated, now you're hurting, your stomach's in pain, and it makes it harder for you to move and travel. So these are really important things if you ever have to move or travel on foot. So please eat whatever you intend to travel with in a high stress, disaster type situation where you're being forced to evacuate. Okay, so I'm going to literally maybe retouch on that again, because that is such an important point that I really hope that people think about that and put it to practice. Okay, so there is so many foods on the market. There is so many foods, so many of these freeze-dried, prepackaged meals, and these are really good. These are really good for a disaster emergency preparedness type situation because they're so lightweight. You want to put warm water in them, but even if you don't have warm water to put in them and you just put cold water in them and you just let the cold water sit in them for a longer period of time, they will eventually be able to moisten and penetrate all the food that's in there, and it will be, able to be eaten and digested. Here's the problem: is it's probably not going to be that tasty or that appealing. But in a pinch where you have no ability to cook or heat up water, it's still, they're still going to work. So not, maybe not as tasty, maybe not as palatable, but you're still getting calories into you. And that's what we want to talk about here. That's what's important, is it doesn't even matter if you really like and enjoy the food. Oh, that's preferable. If you've been hiking for a whole day or walking or whatever the case is, then it's really preferable that you have something that at least you're looking forward to. That, hey, when we stop, I'm going to have this nice meal. You know, but what's really cool about a lot of the foods that I'm going to suggest to you is that foods that you can eat while you're still moving. So if your body is of the physical ability which you can keep moving, where you can like walk for a whole day, which is not a very big percentage of the population right now. So I don't know, maybe about 30% of the population, maybe less, could walk for a whole day. The vast majority of people are not going to be able to do that. They're not going to be able to walk for a whole day. So that's another thing you need to be able to know. But that we'll get into that in a different video. So you've got the freeze-dried meals that are prepared. You've got so many different things out there in the form of protein bars, beef sticks. And that's what you're really looking for, right? What you're going for is you're going for protein and you're going for calories. So that's what you're trying to store up. You're trying to store up protein and you're trying to store up calories, because those are the things that you really want to kind of get into you. There's even, canned tuna fish, canned chicken. Those things are really, really good. They're going to be high in your protein, but they're not going to be really that high in fat. So when you're moving, you're going to want both. So you're looking for foods out there that will have both protein and fat, if you can get that, in whatever foods that you like to eat. That's what you're aiming for. And here's what I would recommend. I would recommend just simply research the food that you currently eat, without starting to spend money on these expensive packets of food and anything else is going on. Research what you currently eat, and then just find out which thing that you eat has the most fat, the most nutrients, the most protein already in it. And then that's what you're simply going to do. You're going to buy more of it. You're going to buy more of it, stockpile it, make sure you're cycling through it so that you never run out. Most of us, when we literally will let a certain item in our grocery list run out before we'll go to the store and replenish it. With your emergency food supply that you've decided on, you can never do that. You can never let it run out. You've got to make sure that you keep cycling through it, but never get down below whatever amount it is, that if you have to travel, you're grabbing that, you're putting it in your backpack and you're going. Maybe you put it in a backpack. But here's the problem that I find with people putting food in a backpack, their go bag, where the emergency is so severe that they have to go grab this backpack and start running or start driving, or whatever the case is. The truth is, most emergencies, they're just not really going to happen where you don't have enough time to go to your pantry and just push all that food into a plastic bag or another backpack or whatever it is, and have that food so that you can get moving. I mean, you're talking about it adding like maybe 30 to 40 seconds. I mean, it shouldn't take that long if all the food is on your rack ready to go, where you're just basically scooping all that into a plastic bag. The benefit of that is now you can cycle it properly. Because the last thing you want to do is be having food in your emergency food bag, and I've done this several times, where the food didn't get cycled out, or I bought food that maybe say it had a 5-year lifespan, and food that I packed away and 10 years ago, I don't want to eat that stuff because I literally don't know what it's going to do to my body. So it's twice as much as what it's recommended sell by date. And I don't really go by shelf life on a lot of foods, especially dried foods. Shelf life, the expiration date, it doesn't really apply, to be quite honest, with a lot of canned foods or dried foods. But it is foods, your meats, any of your wet foods. Those are the things that you do want to pay attention to, that, because that's usually where your bacteria is able to grow, and that's where you're going to get things that will make you sick if you eat it way beyond its expiration time and you're eating something that's now going to cause you to have, vomiting or diarrhea, and that's a big deal. Vomiting and diarrhea is a big deal when you're trying to move and you're trying to relocate. You want to make sure that you're eating food that your body is used to, so that you prevent any kind of illness or stomach illnesses or anything like that. So food that you normally eat, and if there's other food, if you feel like there's a gap, that you don't have enough, then start buying foods and testing them out and eating them. You can buy like your Slim Jims or those kind of things that just get some protein into you, some fat, and start eating them and see how your body reacts. And if your body reacts just fine, great. Then hey, this is something that you've just added to your food supply. So people might, they might laugh at this next part, but the thing is, human beings have been doing this for a long time. So sandwiches. So the Earl of Sandwich. So what they used to do was they used to take the meat and they used to put the meat under the saddle. So they would ride on the meat, and the friction and the heat would actually cook the meat, and it would cook a lot of the bad bacteria out of it. So by the time they stopped, they would take the meat and they would put it between two slices of bread and they would eat it. So the Earl of Sandwich came up with this to move his army. And now we know it as a sandwich. It's kind of crazy how the origin of some of these things come into place, but sandwiches are an amazing thing. Especially modern day bread. Modern day bread lasts, I mean, it's kind of crazy with all the preservatives and everything we've got in it, but it will last a period of time. I would still highly recommend that you have some kind of a good bread, some kind of a, like a Dave's Killer bread or something that's got more nutrients in it than just your white bread. There's no saying, the whiter your bread, the quicker you're dead. So you're wanting something that's got a little bit of grains in it, seeds, different things in there that's good stuff, so that when your body eats it, your body can process it properly. It's not messing up your gut bacteria. It's not a food that your body's not used to that's going to cause a problem with your digestive tract. So those are the kind of foods that you want to go after, foods that you eat. So even things like some meat that you're taking out that you maybe have in your freezer, that's obviously not something that you want to have in your backpack. But you know what? You take it out and you put it in the bag. It's going to be cold. It's going to help keep some other foods cold, because you do want to try to bring some fruits and some vegetables, even if they're raw, it doesn't matter. You want that because you're going to be lacking fiber in a lot of these prepared meals, especially any of the freeze-dried stuff. Like, you're just not going to get the same amount of fiber, especially if you're doing MREs that are just loaded with sodium, like I said. So getting that fiber into your body that will help keep you regular. It can even just be like things like applesauce pouches. Things that you would use for your kids' lunches. Things that you would use for your kids' lunches are excellent. A lot of those things are really, really good, because most of the time we're giving our kids good food, good quality food. And, if we have extra boxes of that, like, always keep stocked up and just put that stuff, just put it in your car. If you're having to put it in your backpack, put it in your backpack and away you go. The cool thing about using that stuff is your kids are used to eating it. And so if you're having to travel with kids, you absolutely, kids can be so picky. And you don't want to be dealing with a hungry, cranky child that's like crying every 10 steps you take, because this is already an unnatural situation for your kids. So doing a wee bit of hiking with your kids, getting your kids used to walking, that's a really good plan to get your kids just walking a little bit, and then you can monitor them. You can see what they like, what they don't like, and try to pack some of those foods. It's really, really important for your kids that you have travel food that you can travel with, that they like. So, even little packets of cookies, whatever the case is. Just be very careful about things like chocolate, or letting them to eat too much sugar. When I was evacuating kids in Ukraine, I had to play around with my kids packs. I made these little kids packs that would have like a little puzzle, some little crayons, a little toy, like a little, spinner, a fidget spinner, or just something that would occupy them, something that they could play with whenever I was evacuating them, so that it distracted them from the artillery that was coming in and out, or the process of what we were doing, because it was a high stress situation. So what I found was certain things that I was putting in those packs, like we were putting like chocolates and things like that there. What happens was the kids were eating it all. And I don't know if it was stress eating or just because in Ukraine the kids maybe are not as used to candy as our kids are, but they were eating it all and then they were puking. So I had to change it out, and I started putting things in there like crackers, So I put in like peanut butter crackers or things that they would eat, but wouldn't cause them to have that intense sort of sugar intake that they would then puke up. Last thing you want to deal with is a puking child. So if you've got kids, doing little walks with your kids, giving them food, seeing how their body handles it, and making them walk after the food has been eaten, that's really important. So you can take a 10-15 minute break if you want, but you need to kind of know how your body and how your kids' bodies react after you've eaten the meal. This is really, really important because that's when you're going to have a lot of the issues. Is after you've eaten the meal, how does their bodies handle it? So even portions turn out to be really, really important in situations like this, where you get to learn in advance, how much do I give my kid? So if you haven't done any of this training and you find yourself in an emergency situation, please ration what you give to them. I'm telling you, I guarantee you, these kids were just sitting on a bus, so they weren't even really having to move, but the nerves was already messing with their stomachs. So here's what happens in a high stress situation or when a person goes into shock. Your body is trying to protect its core and it wants to conserve energy. It can't really tell what the threat actually is. When your body goes into shock, it can't really tell what the actual threat is. So it has this same blanket sort of response. And that response in a high stress situation or shock is it will start to actually shut down your digestive system. So one of the things that we teach, I'm a first aid instructor, so one of the things I would teach in first aid, if you believe a person's went into shock, you don't want to give them food and water, you unless you feel like they're dehydrated, but almost never try to give them food, and if they do take water, it's tiny wee sips, because their body is going to reject it and probably throw it back up. So understand that's what's potentially going on with your child in a high stress situation, or even with you, is the nerves, that your nervous system is reacting and your body could be shutting down, certain processes like your digestive tract to give you the energy it needs to get going. So please keep that in mind. So if you haven't prepared, eating small amounts as you travel is going to be much better than stopping for meals. So maybe you stop for a rest and that's great, but it's not a bad idea to maybe still eat incrementally, like small amounts, even as you walk, and let your body be processing and burning that energy as you go. If you do stop for a meal, you're probably going to want to spend a wee bit of time, at least 15-20 minutes, to try to let it settle before you get moving again. So, okay, what are some of the other things? Well, we talked about meat. So we've got like beef jerky and things like that, tallow, and then tushonka, which I was showing in a previous video, which is the pork, which is in a jar of its renderings. That stuff is really, really awesome, but it's heavy. So even just the glass jar is heavy. So for instance, if you were to do tushonka, and instead of putting it in the glass jars, you had some tushonka that were in freezer-proof Ziploc bags that you put in the freezer, then you just take them out and you put them in your backpack. What's kind of cool is it's going to stay cold. So if you've got other foods that you want to keep cold for 2-3 days and you put everything in a little cooler bag in your backpack, now you've got some food that will stay cold for a period of time. And as it thaws, you can eat it. That stuff will even be good for like a couple of days after it thaws. So you've got a different variety of food in there. And with that fat in the tushonka, like that's really giving you a lot of energy. I remember doing marches in the military and basically them telling us for some of the big marches, take butter. I thought that was crazy. But we did. What we did is we froze the butter and then we took the butter and then we would just eat the butter as we would march. And as long as we didn't eat too much of it, you just eat little pieces at a time, like you could feel it kind of giving you a wee bit of energy. So these are things that your body is somewhat used to, that you will more than likely be able to handle. And people have been doing this for thousands of years. I know that we're trying to delve into science with all these fancy foods, but you can just simply go basic. You can go back to the roots, like I said, like beef tallow, like things that we used to have that we would, be able to process and then be able to eat throughout the winter. because even in the past, storage was just a problem. So here's something else that I'm going to suggest, and a lot of people are going to probably like say, I'd rather die. Fruitcake. You know, fruitcake is probably the hero of the Iditarod. You know, so when they were doing the Iditarods, fruitcake is one of the main foods that they would try to bring with them, because simply one slice of fruitcake can have like 450 calories in it. Plus fruitcake, it's crazy how long that stuff lasts. It's I'm one of that 20% of people that like fruitcake. I know about 80% of people don't like fruitcake, but I actually like it. Oh, my eyes are. So I actually like fruitcake. So fruitcake is awesome. Fruitcake will literally last if you store it in a proper cool, dry place in your pantry. That stuff can literally last like years. So fruitcake is awesome in a pinch because there's so much stuff in it. Plus, fruitcake has fiber, and that's really, really important to trying to keep your gut bacteria regulated with certain foods that you normally eat. So obviously you can go with like the protein bars and all these foods that you're going to find at your local store or online. What you're looking for is you're looking for high energy, high protein, high fat foods. Find out what you like. To go online and to listen to some guy giving you all the options of what they like, that's great. But that doesn't mean to say that you like the same food and your body is going to handle it the same way. So start researching. Start eating it. This is really important. Start eating it. And same sort of rule of thumb. Find out what you would need for 3 days and then simply multiply it by 5. Okay? So just get 3 days worth of that food and then multiply it by 5, and now you're covered for 2 weeks. You obviously have to multiply that per person, and you've got emergency food that your body is used to, that you're going to enjoy, and you're not going to have to cook it. So let me know what you think in the comments. Feel like I'm missing anything, please help me out. Leave a comment so that we can get people all the information they need. Thank you.